The module begins in 1945, immediately after the end of World War II, when Nazi Germany had been defeated and invaded from the west by the capitalist countries America and Great Britain, and from the east by the communist Soviet Union. The temporary alliance of convenience that had existed between the communist Soviet Union and America during World War II soon gave way to Cold War tensions. Both sides were keen to see their political and economic systems adopted by other countries around the world. The countries that the Soviet Union had occupied during the war became client or satellite states of the USSR. In other words, they became and remained communist. The British Prime Minister at the time, Winston Churchill, talked about an Iron Curtain developing, or a divide between the communist East and the capitalist West. The US government was very afraid that communism would spread throughout Europe and the world, especially given the poverty experienced in Europe following the end of World War II. So the USA established the Marshall Plan, where the US government would give huge sums in aid to European countries as long as they remained capitalist. Nowhere was the Iron Curtain more apparent than in Germany, where the Soviet Union, Britain, France and the United States of America all controlled different parts of the country. The capital city of Germany, which was Berlin, was actually in the Soviet half of the country. However, as it was the capital, it was divided into 4 sectors, with each of the victors from World War II owning a portion. The Soviet Union hoped that Berlin would soon become communist, and that the Allies, or the capitalist West, would give up on it. In June 1948, the Soviet Union refused to allow the Western countries to transport in provisions to Berlin. Unfortunately for the USSR, the Western powers were not about to desert Berlin. So, instead of using the roads which had cut off, they flew supplies in instead, risking getting shot down by the Soviets. However, the Soviet Union did not shoot the planes down, and in April 1949, the British, French and Americans united their zones as the West Germany. The Soviets united theirs as the GDR, or German Democratic Republic. So effectively Berlin and Germany was split in two and would remain so until 1990. Another region where Cold War tensions erupted following World War II was in Korea, where Soviet troops and American troops were in the country following the end of the war. North Korea became communist, South Korea became capitalist, and in 1950 the North invaded the South, which subsequently caused war. The United Nations force who fought on the side of the South was comprised mainly of American troops. The Soviet Union supported the North with military hardware, advice and aid. The war lasted until 1954, but it ended with the country still divided, as it is today. We also need to be mindful of the fact that the prospect of nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States was a very real one, and many people lived in fear from day to day and week to week that a nuclear holocaust could be unleashed at any time. Therefore, people on both sides of the Iron Curtain were extremely fearful of the other. In America, the fear of communism, or communism spreading, became known as the Red Scare, because red is the colour typically associated with communism. The American government and many citizens became paranoid that communists were working within America to try and overthrow the government and the US way of life. In fact, the American government was so concerned that they established HUAC, or the House Committee on Un-American Activities, who were tasked with finding out the identities of communists and ensuring that they didn't succeed in any potential attempts to overthrow the government. One of HUAC's roles was to investigate Hollywood or the American film industry because they feared that communists might infiltrate that industry and use it to spread propaganda within America. 10 Hollywood writers refused to cooperate and give evidence to HUAC, claiming that the Constitution of the United States gave them the privilege to hold whichever political beliefs they wanted and also to free speech. Some film stars, for instance Humphrey Bogart, supported the 10, who were imprisoned for not giving evidence. Then HUAC began to investigate people who supported the Hollywood 10. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, established loyalty boards to investigate government workers to see if they were communist or had communist sympathies. Over 200 such workers were subsequently forced to resign from their posts. Then in 1948, HUAC put Alger Hiss, who had previously been an advisor to President Roosevelt, on trial, accused of being a communist. Unfortunately for Alger Hiss, during the trial, the Soviet Union tested their very first atomic bomb, increasing paranoia and fear in America of the potential for nuclear war, and that Soviet spy rings had infiltrated America. The evidence given in the Hiss case was confused, complicated and intricate. In short, nothing was clear. Alger Hiss was found guilty of lying to the court but not spying, and he was sent to prison for this. The guilty verdict given to Alger Hiss led many people to believe that he had actually been a spy. When this was not proved, he was sent to prison simply for lying, not spying. However, Congress passed the Mccarran Act, which denied communists the right to carry US passports and also limited the types of work they could do. All communist organisations in America had to be registered and their members were investigated. On the 18th of July 1950, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, a married couple, were arrested on suspicion of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. The evidence against them, similar to the evidence in the Alger Hiss trial, was confused and not clear. The arrest of the Rosenbergs came immediately after the breakout of the Korean War, and fear of communism in America was very, very high. Many people, including the judge at the trial, blamed the Rosenbergs for the Soviet Union acquiring the technology to manufacture their own atomic bombs, the invasion of Korea, and other social and economic problems in the United States. They were both found guilty and sentenced to death. In the United Kingdom, a person convicted of a similar crime was only sentenced to 14 years imprisonment, not death. And the huge difference in the two sentences between the suspect in the United Kingdom, who received 14 years, and the Rosenbergs, who received a sentence of death by execution, was huge, and shows just how big the fear of communism was in the United States of America. The Rosenbergs were eventually executed on the 19th of June 1953.